views and opinions expressed on Xplorers Seekers of the Truth or that of their guests or contributors are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. All information on Xplorers Seekers of the Truth is provided in good faith. However, we make no representation or warranty of any kind, express or implied, regarding the accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, availability, or completeness of any information on this talk show or website.
From monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings, join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
I hope that worked.
It's too spooky for me. Look, I had to turn away.
Are you feeling all right there, child?
No, I wasn't. I was scared. I was under my desk praying.
Oh, well, welcome back.
Yeah. My voice just changed going in and out of character.
That's all right. That's all right.
So, well, welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 60. Tonight, as always, I'm joined by my best friend and co-host and technical difficulty sufferer. Not erectile dysfunction sufferer, but technical difficulty sufferer.
I get hymns for that problem.
Blue Chew? You just sponsor. So how you doing this evening, buddy?
Well, not too bad. I am trying to figure out. I noticed when our video, hopefully, first of all, I hope everybody listening, which I don't know how many people are listening right now, but I'm hoping whoever might be listening was able to see the video intro that we had going on there. We tried testing it before and there was a delay. I don't know how it went off when we went live. Hopefully it didn't. But while the video was playing, I noticed it was playing back through my laptop speakers and not through my headphones. So I had a quick jump in to my system preferences and update the output. It's always something that you never think about until it's too late. So hopefully the video played through. We worked hard. One of the things that Chad and I were working on while we took our little leave of absence during the month of September was our new intro video. We're trying to ramp up some of the production value of the show in hopes to bring a more entertaining show to you all, the public. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully the video played and there were no issues or anything. So let us know in the comments if you did see the opening video, if you were able to hear it and view it and from start to finish. It started with our disclaimer and then ended off with a cool little video about what we do on this show and during our investigations and stuff like that, what, Explorers Seekers of the Truth actually is. So aside from that, like I mentioned, you could view us live on Facebook. You could view us live on YouTube. It streams live simultaneously. You could comment underneath either one of those shows on either platform. We'll see it here on the back end of our interface, and we could comment back to you. So like I said before, if you're able to see the opening video and hear the opening video, let us know during the show so that way we could know that what we're doing is actually working. Whew. So other than that,
oh, by the way,
back to you.
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
But
do you want to talk a little bit about our little time off there? And
yeah, just between work and some personal stuff that I'm really not able to talk about right now. So eventually when I'm there, I'll talk about it. And everything's fine now.
yeah.
So, but yeah, so I mean, with work, it's been a little busy, a little hectic, a little short staff. So, been hanging it together with some bubblegum band-aids and thumbtacks.
That's
And I know
right.
you've been super busy with work, so
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But
So,
we have still been working on stuff for the show, and
yes.
there may be some future announcements of some pretty interesting stuff coming up. Some things we're going to try out with the show, much like the video intro tonight. Hopefully, it worked. But
Fingers crossed.
some other additions and stuff to the show that we're going to try out and see how it works.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for
as
sure.
Les said, you can always reach us on Twitter/X at
That's true.
Explorers Group, our website, explorersgroup.com. As
Yep,
well
and
as here on
YouTube,
YouTube.
Facebook. Yeah.
So, anything you want to say about our hiatus?
No, you pretty much covered it all. I mean, basically, between work, personal stuff that's going on, and whatnot, I just and primarily most of the delay was on me. Chad was ready, and I just was overwhelmed with work and some new things that had changed in my career, I guess you could say, and I needed time to focus on that. So I appreciate everybody's patience, and I yet apologize for not putting the show on like we regularly do. But now, hopefully, we are back on track, and with us coming back on October 3rd, that should put us in line to have another All Hallows Eve show on the 31st. That show will be held a little bit later than our normal time, just so that way I could take my kids trick-or-treating. So I think we're planning on going live at 9 or 9:30. We'll let you know as soon as we get closer. But it's going to be a little bit later than our normal show, just because, I want to help take my kids around trick-or-treating and stuff like that. By the time we get back, I want to have enough time to get the show up and running and make sure there's no technical issues, because Lord knows we have enough of those.
Yeah.
So other than that, aside from that, let's talk about tonight's show, Chad.
Okay. So before we get into tonight's show, there's something, it happened a couple weeks ago when I was driving home from work. I cross over a major train line. They use it for, hauling materials and freight and all this. Plus, it's also used by Amtrak. So I put in this, I've only ever experienced this in Virginia category. I'm coming down, it's a hill that comes down to these railroad tracks. And I look down, there's a state trooper's SUV parked on the side of the road. And I look, and there's somebody standing in the middle of the lane, and the cars are all stopping in front of me. So I'm like, okay, I better, start slowing down. I'm not flying. I'm just going the speed limit. And I'm slowing down, and I roll up, and it's the state trooper standing in the middle of the road. And he's like, I put down my window, and he's like, hi, sir, how are you doing today? Just wanted to give you this pamphlet about train track safety. I'm like, thank you. If the arms are down, don't try crossing. I don't know.
What
I
the
mean,
heck?
I understand it. There's a lot of train accidents, but it was so weird because I've lived by railroad tracks my entire life.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. I mean, in the county where we grew up, there's railroad tracks all over the place for hauling coal and all that stuff. And I mean, they're used nowadays for freight and stuff like that. I've never once experienced this before. But
no.
Yeah, and the super nice state trooper, really nice, gives us a little card out, pamphlet out. And he's like, "You have a great day, sir." And I just kept going. But it's
So bizarre.
It's Virginia, where like Pennsylvania, where the state police are like the gods of police.
Yeah.
The Virginia state police are like, hey, we're police too. It's like your county, your sheriff's department are in charge of the county. Then you have your city departments and your municipal departments, and then the sheriff's department or the state troopers. So it was just weird because coming down this hill, and I'm thinking, I'm coming home from work. I really, don't want to be bothered. So I'm thinking it's like a seatbelt check or something, or DUI.
Yeah.
I'm like,
train track safety.
It's
it almost sounds like it was.
afternoon.
Yeah. Very bizarre. Very bizarre.
So tonight's topic, something near and dear to Les and I both. This is an area where we grew up, and we actually did quite a few times go there back in the foundation days of Explorers. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
tonight we're going to talk about the Legends of Hawk Mountain, which is in Berks County, Pennsylvania. So Les going to give you just some basic details about the area.
Yes. So Hawk Mountain is a mountain ridge and part of the Blue Mountain Ridge in the Appalachian mountain chain, or Appalachian, depending on how you pronounce it, and is located in the central eastern Pennsylvania near Reading and Allentown. The area includes 13,000 acres of protected private and public land, including the 2,600-acre Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, which one of the main topics is located. So the Hawk Mountain Tavern is one of these places that we're going to be talking about tonight. And this is kind of one of my favorites because we've had a lot of things happen there throughout the years. Like Chad said, during our foundation days, basically back in the like mid 90s when we were first able to drive, these were the places that we would hit up that we knew had the ghost stories, had the hauntings and so on and so forth, and they were the places that we hit up. So what we're going to be talking about is along the road that goes up and over Hawk Mountain, there's a little tavern, and it will be forever connected to Matthias Schombacher, regardless of who occupies it now. The supernatural events connected with the tavern go back farther in time. So the tavern was built by Jacob Gerhardt in 1793, overlooking the lands where, as a child, his family was massacred by the Delaware Indians in 1756. The victims included Jacob's parents, another woman, and 6 children. Only young Jacob survived the slaughter and would return years later to build the tavern near his childhood home. So legend states that the members of the Gerhardt family have been spotted roaming the mountain, seeking a peace they have never yet discovered. So, and another spirit also has been spotted roaming the mountains more than others, the ghost of a 10-foot tall Native American. And legend maintains that he guards an ancient ceremonial circle that the Delaware Indians used when they inhabited the area. And many have reported seeing this gigantic figure walking along the road that passes through the sanctuary, which that same road, as you go up and over past the sanctuary, is where the tavern sits. So when you come up over the crest, it starts going down to the descent, and off to the left is the tavern. And do you want me to bring up the picture of that?
Yeah, it'd be cool. Show people it.
So this is what the tavern looks like now. So this is Schombacher, well, the Jacobs Tavern, and then later known as Matthias Schombacher's Tavern. This is what it looks like now, and I will find another picture of what it looked like, which we thought was kind of interesting, from 1938. This is a shot of the same tavern. Not much of it has changed since 1938, other than the road is now paved. It's not dirt, and a lot of the surrounding area is more overgrown now with vegetation. But I just thought that was really cool, seeing the old cars and the dirt road and everything. And I've never seen it in that state before, but I thought that was pretty cool. So going back to, you could go on now. Sorry, I talked about the oh, wait. Yes, I'm not done yet. I don't even know where I'm at. Okay, so many people reported seeing this gigantic figure walking along the road that passes the sanctuary. Like I said, it goes up over the taverns off to the left. And those who have spotted the figure describe it as being pure evil and threatening. So before we go on, I actually have a story that actually kind of relates to this. And this is the first time, see, Chad dug up a lot of this information. And as always, Chad always finds more stuff than I've ever heard of. I've actually never heard of this Native American spirit before. So it's cool that you found that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, we were, the previous episodes we were talking about like the Bridgewater Triangle, and it's kind of what started us on this whole, kind of re-exploring our roots. And, you can call something the Bridgewater Triangle. Well, if you dig hard enough in any locality, you give yourself a 200-mile triangle, you're going to start finding, tons of folklore, tons of ghost stories, tons of cryptid stories, tons of, just plain old paranormal and UFO stories. So,
right. Right.
This is one of the things when I was looking, I kind of saw this, thing about the 10-foot tall Native American. I personally, at that point, had never really heard much about it, but it does kind of play into a few of the other things that we have experienced there over the years. Not necessarily a 10-foot tall Native American walking around, but some other stories we're going to get into.
Right. Well, pertaining to that, one of the stories that I had from my past is me and two buddies of mine. Actually, the one kid I was really good friends with. The other kid was a friend of his, who at that time was the only one able to drive. We took a ride up to Hawk Mountain. And one of the things that we used to do when we were younger would be go up and hike the mountains after hours and stuff. I don't know if you could really do that anymore now because they've really cut back on how access to the mountain and stuff. So they're more vigilant on who goes up there. But we went up and we're hiking the trail going up to the North Lookout, and as we were coming around this one bend, now again it's dark, full moon, so that all you can see is from the light of the moon. We didn't have flashlights, we didn't have anything, but we were walking up the trail and we heard something behind us, and we just had that sense that we weren't alone. And we turn around, and down as you go back down the trail off to the right, down a little bit of a decline into the forest, there was this Native American standing there with like a blanket wrapped around them, just kind of looking up, very somber, old, weathered face. I can't remember if it had any, like a feather in the, I don't know, but I remember the side braids coming down, the towel over, or the blanket over him. And he was just kind of like looking up at us, real sad, but weathered, older gentleman. What?
Did he have a little tear rolling down his cheek when somebody?
No, it's not like those 70s commercials with that Italian guy who played the Native American because of all the what do you call it? Pollution.
Yeah.
No, but it was weird. Like he was just standing there looking up, and he was illuminated by the moonlight. So you know how like when it's a full moon and you're outside, everything kind of has that like cast, like that white cast to it, or bluish cast.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how this guy looked. Like I couldn't see. It was almost like he was black and white with just a bit of a blue hue from the moonlight. It was bizarre. And all I remember is the kid that drove us there took off like a bat out of hell. Me and my buddy just started to take off a little bit. Then he started running, and I mean, you could see, but I mean, the trail was littered with shadows and everything, and there was rocks all over the place. So I hurried along, but I didn't run. So I was the last in line, and I kept looking back, expecting to see this person, this spirit, whatever you want to call it, behind us, but we didn't see it again after that. But I just thought it was interesting that you found that story. Now it didn't look abnormally tall or anything. It looked just like a normal sized person, standing off in the woods. But we just thought it was so bizarre because, here we are, three of us roaming around. There were no other cars in the parking lot, no other cars along the side of the road or anything when we were up there. Yet there's this person standing there with a blanket on and just by themselves, and bizarre. And I'm telling you, the shade, like the color, like it just didn't look right.
Well, one of the weird things is you mentioned like the illumination from the moonlight. Also check the host chat when you get a second.
Okay.
One of the things that I was listening to a lot of old, got into a weird mood this morning, and was listening to a lot of the old Art Bell Ghost to Ghost AM shows from his. They would do it every Halloween, where all it was just people calling in, faxing in, emailing ghost stories. And one of the things that I picked up on, and I was listening to like a block one, which was a couple of years as the, it was a couple of years worth of episodes. And one of the things that kept coming up was people talking about their experiences, but the blue illumination, which I thought when you said that, kind of triggered like just the memory of what I was listening to, and people were talking about this blue illumination. So now I'm almost 100% certain that all ghosts are illuminated in blue.
I don't know, man. It makes you think, because even looking back at a lot of the personal experiences I've had growing up, like I know we shared in one of our past shows about personal paranormal experiences. I, along with several of my family members, saw the head of a Native American person that would just kind of float and hover in the corner of the one bedroom of our house, our childhood home. And it had like a greeny blue, just kind of an off coloration to it. And it would just kind of float kind of up and down, side to side, just in the corner of the room. And it was wavy lines where like just mist and waviness
Mhm.
where the neck would be. So, I mean, I don't know, but, side note, I don't mean to interject, but just for people listening only on Facebook, talking about technical difficulties, it's been brought to our attention that YouTube did not go live. It's scheduled to be live, but when I started the show, it didn't activate our YouTube channel, so we apologize for that, and we'll download this show and get it up on YouTube later. So again, I apologize for the inconvenience, but we're at the mercy of this interface, and that's another thing that we're going to be looking into. We're going to be looking at a new platform. I think we're going to be looking at StreamYard or something else. If anybody else has any suggestions of other live podcasting hosts applications, let us know, because this Be Live that we've been using for 10 years,
at least 6.
at least it's garbage. It's just one problem after the other. So again, I apologize. Cindy, thank you for tuning in, and thank you very much for the kind words of the story. I'm glad you liked it. So anyways, sorry, back to the topic here.
Yeah. So some of the other events and are strange lights that dance among the trees, and I actually have kind of a story that goes along with a few of these here.
Okay.
Mysterious screams, phantom voices, and vehicles suddenly dying for no apparent reason.
Gosh, that's funny, because that happened to us too. One of the many times we were up there after hours, the one vehicle that we came up in wouldn't start, and there was nothing wrong with that. It was a newer vehicle.
Do you remember when the Jeep wouldn't start when we were out there? I think it was
Your
me,
old red one?
the old red Wrangler.
Yeah, which was an automatic too, so it wasn't like a clutch issue or anything like that.
Yeah, we put the key in it, it wouldn't crank over, and then all of a sudden it just started. I think it was was it you, Joe, and I, or was it?
No, it was me, you, and Drew Vidal.
I was gonna say Drew. That's the next. I was thinking who it had to be. So one of these times when I was up there, and you see this like light going through the woods. Now, of course, it's nighttime, and it was me, 2 friends I'd brought up from Allentown.
Okay.
And we see the light go through the woods as we're going, but you're thinking it's somebody with a flashlight hiking, whatever, like you guys
coming up to chase you out,
Yeah, something. But we see it go through the thing, and then all of a sudden we hear this weird, almost canine-like scream, howl. And you know how all the dogs through that bottom valley where the cemetery are?
Yep.
All just went crazy.
Now, was this up at the sanctuary, or was this down at the church?
This was coming down the road going towards the church.
So you're going down into Eckville.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could see the light going through the woods. And again, like I said, it wasn't going super fast like it was shooting across the area we could see. It just looked like somebody with a flashlight kind of bouncing over some terrain.
Yeah.
But then it went out, and the scream, and then we had the windows down, and all you could hear was the dogs through that entire valley, because there was hounds right towards the bottom by the cemetery.
Yeah.
And you could just hear the hounds all start going, and then every dog through the valley. I mean, that valley runs pretty far out there.
Oh yeah.
You could just hear them yelling, barking. similar to like when they hear coyotes and they get aggressive, like trying to fend off coyotes, like that kind of growling howl going on. But I don't know if you want me to save the Phantom Voices story for a couple minutes or.
Yeah. Because actually, Joe's joining in. Good to see you, Joe. And Shish Worm, which I believe that's Jamie Knapsinger, if I'm not mistaken,
Jamie.
from back in
Pretty
the
sure,
day.
Jamie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He brought up a very true point that you could probably go talk about any story from all over the Skook. There's so much history there. Like Schuylkill County is the Skook that best known to.
I hate that term.
Skook.
Yeah. That and spooky season. If the local radio station says spooky season one more time today, I was about
I'm
to
not
throw
going
the
to
radio.
say that because I was going to say it was spooky season. But...
Just call it Halloween. Stop.
Yes, it's Halloween. But yes, good point. There is lots of history in the areas where we grew up. A lot of like the coal mining history, a lot of early settlement history, and so on and so forth. But yes, Jamie brought up coyotes. That one of the many times we were down, especially at the church, down at the Bethel Church, we would hear all sorts of howling and barking and going on. Yes, some of it could have been coyotes, but most of it, like Chad had said, most of it were dogs in the area. And I'll elaborate more on this story a little bit later, but one of the times we were down there, something happened and all the dogs instantly went berserk. It was crazy and terrifying all at the same time. But do you want me to jump onto the next part, or do you want to do the Phantom Voice?
Well, let's do the next part then, because the story about the Phantom Voice will actually tie in.
Okay. All right.
With the story.
Okay. So one of the oldest buildings in the area, like we were talking about before, is Schombacher's Tavern in the Albany Township, Berks County, again, which is where the sanctuary is. It was built around 1793, and in 1850, it was turned into a wayside tavern for travelers passing over the Kidney Ridge on their way to different points north or south, because that was, I believe, the only through route between like Origsburg, which was one of, like, I think was the first state seat or something like that. So between Origsburg and Allentown, there wasn't much, but that was one of the main routes over before Route 61 was even a thought, you know. So they would go up and over there and they would stop at Schombacher's Tavern and whatnot, and they would, you know, get something to eat, stay the night, you know, trade goods and whatnot. So but today the property is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and it is a private residence for the Hawk Mountain employees. I think the Hawk Mountain caretaker at one point, I can't remember his name, it escapes me, but I think he lived there with his family at one point, but now I believe it's just for the sanctuary itself. I don't think anybody is actually living in it now, but I could be wrong. But Schombacher died in 1879 at the age of 55 after a mental breakdown, and he's alleged to have made a deathbed confession to murdering at least 11 travelers at his inn, and saying that he robbed and killed them, then chopped them up and put the parts down in the well, which was in the backyard. And other parts were put in the woods for animals to get rid of. And he claimed to have been driven to madness and murder by a voice whispering in his ear, telling him to commit the acts, and believed there was a great evil in the mountain. Again, that could tie back to that Indian that we were talking about before. So he's buried in the New Bethel Union Cemetery in Kempton, which is that church we're talking about. If you follow the road that goes up over the mountain, it goes down into Eckville, or a lot of people call it the Ghosts of Eck. You follow that straight back, and eventually you will end up at a left-hand turn that would take you back to the New Bethel Union Church and Cemetery. So that's where he's buried. And like the story says here, Schombacher, a lot of people would, you know, stop at his tavern. They'd come in, he'd get them drunk, put a little something in their drink, take them up to the barn. They'd pass out. He'd kill them, rob them, dispose of their bodies. And supposedly one of the other stories I heard too is that on his deathbed, he committed to the murders. And then when they buried him, lightning struck twice. Once it struck his body, and then it struck again after he was put in the ground, and it struck his headstone. Don't know how true that is. It's all part of the lore. I don't know. But yes, so the well is where he had disposed of a lot of the bodies, and there was supposed to be a tree in the backyard that was used by Native Americans, where they would do a lot of ritualistic stuff. Supposedly they made sacrifices there and offerings to the gods and blah, 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 blah. Again, I don't know how much of this is true. This is all part of the lore and legends of it, but we're telling it as it is. So Joe's saying, is that the church where you fall down the hill, you disappear? Yes, Joe, that's we'll be getting into that. Do you want me to talk about that, or do you want to talk about the voice?
Let me hit the voice story, and then
so
we'll go into the next part. Because actually, one of the legends that I had heard years ago on this tavern was basically around the time of the Civil War. There was a one of the Quartermaster Corps wagons being sent from Allentown to Pottsville to uniform the troops there. Actually, I believe the first casualty of the Civil War is technically from Pottsville.
Yeah.
So this was around this time. There stops at the tavern, and the whole story of the getting something to eat, get something to drink, goes out to the barn with Schallenbacher, and is never seen again. When they go into the barn, because there's a different story where he's actually caught, because they hear somebody screaming in the barn, and people come, the villagers with their pitchforks and what the hell? Pitchforks?
Torches. Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. Come and, find Civil War, Union soldier uniforms, piled in there. And, people alleged he was selling army blankets, but they actually found somebody that he was like in the process of trying to get rid of. And, they tried him for it. And of course, this is part of the legend. Oh, they tried him for it. And then he was hung. Then he was buried, and that's when the lightning struck his body, and he had cursed the land or something like that, or cursed the people who had hung him. Typical, built-up folklore over the years.
Yeah, of course.
And of course that. So fast forward into I want to say late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
Somebody we all went to school with this person. They had lived in with their father, who at the time was the superintendent, caretaker, or whatever they call that position, and they were still living in the tavern as their, was part of their deal. They lived there.
Yeah.
So him and his family lived there for quite a few years, and eventually him and his mom moved. His grandparents bought a house, like 2 houses down from them, in another town, because while they were living there, they constantly heard, at different times, each one of them would hear people talking. And when they would, they'd be sitting at the dinner table, and his mom would be like, for him, and be like, "What did you just say?" And he'd be sitting there, with the food in his, fork to his mouth, nothing. I'm eating. Why? And she'd be like, "Oh, I thought you said something." And his dad would hear it.
Yeah.
And be like, but they always said it sounded like it was coming from the walls. The different walls in the house, but it would be different voices even.
Yeah.
Now, they never said any of the voices were scary voices. They were just people's voices.
Right.
He did mention a few times, some of the stuff they said was take the knife and stab her. It was these just random, but the other times it would just be muffled conversation.
Yeah.
And there was times, like I said, there was 3 of them living in the house. At times, the 3 of them would hear the same conversations.
Yeah.
And of course his dad is very not paranormal, not, none of this stuff is real to him.
Right.
he would go outside thinking somebody's like in the yard
Yeah.
talking, and they're hearing. I mean, it's an old house. It was built in the 1700s.
Yeah.
So they're thinking like, oh, the wall's probably thin. We're probably hearing somebody outside. So they'd go outside, look, there'd be nobody there. Then at night, at different points in the year, they'd hear stuff bang off the house. Like somebody took their hand and just like palmed the side of the house.
Yeah.
Go outside, look around. Because of course we went there as kids. I'm sure our parents probably heard these same stories and went there as kids, and people probably went there and partied, and
or drove passing through something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you throw something at the house as you drive by, scare the people. Or, you go knick-knacking, where you take a handful of corn and you whip it. And,
Yep.
So, they would go outside and check, and there'd be nobody around. Nothing like laying near the house or anything like that. Him and his mom eventually moved out. His dad actually had to stay, I think, for another year living in there before he could actually get out of the house.
Holy crap.
Part of his job. Like, that was, I think, around the time they start changing the rule and the person having to live there.
Yeah.
But, they would hear the conversations. They would hear, people's conversations. They'd hear people yelling. They'd hear things hit the house. They did experience poltergeist activity in the house where, like, they would sit something on the kitchen table and they'd all be sitting there eating, and they would just see it like slide across the table. And it wasn't something with like moisture or condensation that would start sliding.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like a knife, and it would just start sliding on the table. They would find like glasses broke on the floor, or at night they'd hear it like whip across the kitchen and smash on the wall.
Yeah.
They would go downstairs, though, at times and not find any broken glass. Other times they would find broken glass, like they'd hear it in the kitchen, but they'd go to the front door in the morning to go out, and there'd be a broken glass sitting at the front door.
What?
Yeah. And I don't know if the person would ever, talk about it. I lived across the street from his grandparents, and then where they eventually moved to. So I kind of got some information about it. And his dad always, no, nothing, nothing like that. And, it's an old house. You'd hear stuff.
Yeah. That's pretty bizarre, man. I think I'd be freaked out and want to get the hell out of there too.
Well, think about it. It's your job. You can't just move out. And it, for that area, it was a rather well-paying position, for what that person's schooling was.
Oh, that is creepy as hell. Well, one of the things in the notes here too is one of the other inhabitants after Schombacher, William Turner and his wife and their 8 children, according to old records found in the tavern. The Turners found human remains in all 3 of the wells on the property. So that kind of validates the stories, and with going back to the Civil War car that you're talking about, I remember one of the stories were saying that there was always like rumors or murmuring of people suspecting him of foul play, but nobody could ever prove it. And then they knew that Civil War cart had gone missing. They couldn't find it, and they suspected him, but he, denied. But then somebody traveling up and over saw him outside with a military jacket on. And then they went and told the local authorities. Then they went to investigate him, but I guess he was on to it, that he realized, oh shit, I was caught, and somehow disposed of everything. They couldn't find anything, but so there's a few different variants of that story, but nonetheless, that was one of the turning points of people not trusting him anymore. So, and do we want to go to his cemetery really quick before we go on to the next part?
Yeah, let's talk about some of the experiences in the cemetery.
All right, I'll actually bring up a picture of his headstone. So this is from the street looking up into the cemetery at the New Bethel Church Cemetery. And Joe had mentioned in the comments there about the hill. So the headstone that you guys could see, or the little pedestal or base where the headstone once stood, is actually Matthias Schombacher's headstone. So if you're in front of the cemetery down on the road, there's a little hill that goes up maybe 10, 15 feet high. And he's the third headstone in from the right, off from the church, right in the front road. So legend has it, I guess, if you will, and I'll try and bring up another picture from another angle of the church. So this is from the top of the hill of the cemetery looking down to the road. And there's that little hill. I don't know if you can really see it, but there's a little tiny hill at the end of the cemetery where the road is. And legend has it that if you fall down that hill in front of his headstone, you disappear into another dimension. And obviously that's a hard pill to swallow. But when I was down there when we were younger, it was me, my younger brother, and 3 friends of ours. We all crammed into the one guy's little Nissan car. What was it? Nissan Pulsar or something like that. It was a teeny tiny little car, barely enough to fit us all. So we all go out there, and it was in the winter time. So there was still snow in the cemetery and on the grass. And we were walking around in front of Schombacher's grave, and at the time the headstone was still standing, and on either side there were those red eternal candles, the votives, and they had the candles down inside. So one of them was standing up next to the headstone, the other one was lying flat, but it was parallel to the road, right? So one of the guys went over and tapped it with his foot, and it turned completely the opposite direction. So the bottom end of the votive or the candle was facing the road. It turned and then slid down the road in a perfect line. It didn't bounce, it didn't shake, it didn't shimmy, nothing. Because I mean, it was kind of like that frozen over snow, so it's kind of crusty, and when things slide down it, we like and hop and bump. This thing didn't move at all. It literally, like, he just tapped it with his foot. It turned completely the opposite direction and slid straight down the hill, almost, like, hey, go get it. Go down the hill and get it. You better run after it. So, like, maybe you would trip and fall or slip or whatever. So we all thought that was kind of weird. So we start walking down because we were going to walk the long way down and back up to where it was lying next to the road. Well, as we're walking down, and then in those days we were skaters. So we always had like the Airwalk shoes or the Vision Streetwear shoes that had the flat bottoms. I guess they're kind of like DCs or Etnies or whatever they are now. I don't know. I'm not in with it anymore. But my younger brother was walking along the edge of that little knoll, that little hill. And as he's walking, he's just slowly starting to slide down the hill. Well, where I'm behind him, I go running over, and I was bigger than him. And I grab him by the hand to try and pull him back. I start sliding. I reach back, grab my friend's hand. He starts sliding. The 4th guy grabs. He starts sliding until the 5th guy grabs. And then we all pull each other back up the hill. But I just thought it was so bizarre because I'm like, there's 5 of us struggling to pull this. My brother at the time was this tiny, scrawny little kid.
And I would like to add, yes, Les's brother was tiny and scrawny, but the other 4 people Les are describing in this story were easily 180 to 200 and
something
50-ish pounds.
Yep,
These aren't,
yep.
and none of them were little dudes, and all of them were pretty in shape back in these days. I don't know how, I haven't seen some of them in 20 years, but
yeah.
I know who these people are, and I mean, played football with some of them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
that we weren't weak. You're right. You know what I mean? We were in shape, but whatever was going on, and I'm not saying it was paranormal or whatever, but whatever was going on was completely bizarre because we were getting pulled down this hill. by some unknown force, and it was bizarre. So we pulled him back up, then we all go back down. We get in the car. Now, again, these guys, they were pranksters and stuff like that, and they messed around all the time. But we get in the car, and I don't recall seeing any of them go to where the candle was, because the car was down a little bit further from the grave site and where the candle rolled down next to the road, because we were parked right along the base of the hill on the side of the road. I don't remember seeing any of them walking up to where the candle was, because we all kind of got down and we're all like, oh my God, we're all commenting about, almost getting pulled down that hill. We all jump in the car. Lying on the floor on the back seat, or the back of the car, was the candle.
Wow.
The votive.
Yeah.
So, and we start driving and we look down, we're like, holy shit, the one guy's going crazy. We're like, what? And he picks it up and he's like, the goddamn candle. And he threw it over at actually towards me, because I was sitting in the back, and all this like crusty snow. Well, I thought it was crusty snow. It was something, I don't know, ash or snow. I don't know what was in it. But when he threw it at me, all this stuff was like going all over the car. It was all over me, all over my brother and everything. We're like, oh God, we're all freaking out. They slam on the brakes. We throw the thing out the window and we got the hell out of there. So that was very bizarre, to say the least.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I know, like, one of the things is his grave site. Like, the funny thing was, when you showed the picture, there's no candles on it.
No.
Like, every time I've ever been there, there's always 2 candles on it. There's, drawings on that plate, on there. And I know people allegedly use it for
Seances.
Conjuring, seancing, and, over the years. So,
actually, I think Joe, weren't you with me the one time when we went back there and we actually found candles lit? I thought Joe was with me that time. There was a bunch of us. I thought Joe was there. Let me know if you remember that. One time we went back there and there were still candles lit. Like, somebody was just there. And it wasn't like like I said, the eternal candles. Like,
no, I've seen the little, what do they call those, teacup candles or whatever?
Tea lights,
I've seen them lit on it. I've seen actual, like, big white candles, black candles, like, and still burning, like, if the candle's 12 inches, maybe 2 inches of it burnt so far.
Yeah. So, whoever had lit it was probably still somewhere hanging around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What story do we want to talk about next? Because I have,
well, let's go on. Let's go on to some of the other unsolved deaths of the area, and then we'll go to the next one.
Okay.
Because that kind of pertains to the next one. Pertains to another building near the cemetery.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have one in the cemetery. I have 2 in the cemetery.
Share.
Well, let's do the unsolved deaths in the area.
Yes.
So the mountain does have at least a handful of unsolved deaths attributed to it, including an unidentified man discovered near the pinnacle in 1977. The most noted death connected with the mountain is the murder of Matthias Berger.
Oddly, another Matthias.
Yeah. Berger was a devout Catholic. He lived in a crude hut. Most kind of just looked like a teepee.
Mm-hmm.
And he had built it along the Catawissa Road. Berger mostly stayed to himself. He was kind of known, as being a hermit.
Mm-hmm.
And, pretty much anybody that knew him, nobody really ever had a bad thing to say about the guy. Just that, he stayed to himself. Nobody ever suspected anybody, of being an enemy of him.
Yeah.
So on June 29th, 1980, Harold Mole had stopped at Berger's place to find the hermit missing and the place in disarray. Mole gathered some people and they began to search for Berger. His lifeless body was discovered lying face down on a pile of rocks. He was taken to Reading and given a proper burial. Basically they figured it was a robbery. was the reason behind his death, and his murder happened almost 3 weeks before the body was found.
Ugh.
Yeah. Berger was chased for nearly 2 miles before he was killed. This is all stuff they've been able to piece together over the years. It's unknown who was chasing him, and to this day, as far as I know, the murder remains unsolved.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
That's definitely one I have never heard of before.
Well, I mean, it happened a little slightly after we were all, born, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, this guy, this, as far as I know, and I tried to look it up and I didn't see that there was ever any notation of it being solved or somebody coming forward with new evidence on it. But yeah, this guy was, I mean, basically they just said he was, he was a hermit. He was kind of stayed to himself, didn't bother people. Nobody really had a bad thing to say about him. But I assume people thought because he was a hermit and all this, he probably had money. It was one of those crazy coots that was burying it in his yard, or maybe somebody saw him burying some money. The old Legend of the Woolly Swamp by Charlie Daniels. Lucius, oh my God, I can't remember the whole song, but the guy used to bury mason jars of money in his yard.
Yeah. Well, isn't supposedly one of the richest people in Schuylkill County a homeless guy in Pottsville?
I think so.
That's one of the things I've heard too. So, but I don't know.
Well,
actually, my neighbor Ron said that he was born in the 70s, and this was a big story in the area. So that's interesting to know.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, people evidently cared enough about the guy to stop, probably didn't see him for a little while and decided to stop by and say, hey, how you been? Are you okay? And the guy who stopped to find him, found the place in disarray and, eventually was part of the crew that, found the body. But I mean, 3 weeks, that's especially in June.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty nasty.
And also, you got all those animals. You do have
Yeah.
coyotes, you do have bear, you do have, other scavengers in that area. So that's a pretty nasty experience. But like I said, as far as I know, it's never been solved.
That's pretty messed up, and that just contributes to the spirit count of that area. You know what I mean? So, all right. So the next story or the next topic that we want to cover. Do we want to go to the shuck?
Well, yeah. Let's give the background on what a shuck is, and then because I know you have a story and I have a story that aren't the same story, so that both I think involve that, and I have another story, and I think you have another story, and we have like 6 minutes.
Oh yes,
but we can go a little longer.
All right, so the black shuck, old shock, or simply shuck, is the name given to a ghastly black dog which is said to roam the coastline and countryside of East Anglia. One of the many such black dogs recorded in folklore across the British Isles. Accounts of black shuck from parts of the folklore of Norfolk, Suffolk, and Cambridgeshire, Fens, and Essex, and descriptions of the creature's appearance and nature vary considerably. It is sometimes recorded as an omen of death, but in other instances is described as companionable. So the Oxford English Dictionary states the name shuck derives from the Old English word succa, or devil fiend, perhaps from the root ska, to terrify. The first mention in print of black shuck is by the Reverend E.S. Taylor in 1850 edition of the journal Notes and Queries, which describes Shuck the dog fiend. This phantom I have heard many persons in East Norfolk and even Cambridgeshire describe as having seen as a black shaggy dog with fiery eyes and immense size, and who visits churchyards at midnight. That is the historical definition and or description of a black shuck. Now, that obviously was in England, in Europe, but the black shuck has been seen all around the world. But we wanted to give that history of the black shuck. So
actually, you and I both have the black shuck on our walls.
Yes, actually.
Mine's actually over here. Yours is behind you.
Yep, the Beast of Britain poster up there. Yes. So graciously given to us by our buddy Andy McGrath.
Yeah. Actually, Andy and I conversation about the Black Shuck the one day when he was walking home from work, because I had mentioned this actual story that I'm going to get into here to him, and he was actually amazed. He's like, "Oh, well," I just went into Andy's voice there for a second. Oh. But we were talking about it, and he was actually amazed that like this folklore or and creature is even seen in the New World, as he calls it. But so we were at the cemetery. Can you bring up one of the 2 pictures of the cemetery?
Sure. Do you want the view from the back of it or from the front?
Bring up the one from the front, I think. Might be the best one. So again, I was a couple friends of mine from college and I were, we would drive around and, go to these different haunted places or alleged haunted places. So they had never been to Hawk Mountain or to the cemetery. So we decided to drive out there the one night, and we're in my Jeep Cherokee. I had a green Jeep Cherokee Sport at the time. So there's 3 of us in the vehicle. And so we drive all the way up from Allentown. It's funny because this was at one time the route from Allentown to Pottsville. So we drive up and we park actually. Can you bring up the picture of the church?
Yes.
So we park right by the church lot there. And we're walking up, and actually we're up about where that large gravestone is in this photo. And out of the woods comes this black dog. Now, it doesn't have fiery red eyes. It's just a large black dog. At first, I kind of thought, oh, somebody's dog got loose. It just sat there. It like walks out of the woods and sits and just focuses right. Now it's dark. It's around midnight. This thing just focuses right on us. There's 3 of us standing there. So we're like, oh shit, that's a big dog. And like, these are all people who owned big dogs. And we all 3 said, oh shit, that's a big dog.
Yeah.
So one of us starts cutting down back towards the church.
Mm-hmm.
The other one kind of does a loop and goes up and is going back down the other side towards the vehicle. This thing just got up, walks towards me, gets within probably about 10, 15 yards, and stops and starts staring at me. And just, now again, doesn't have fiery red eyes, it looked like a large, really big, solid black Rottweiler.
Holy shit.
Anybody that knows me knows I hated Rottweilers. But it was bigger than my friend's Rottweiler, Barkley, which was huge.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Barkley was a huge dog. I hate that dog. Some trauma there. We'll work out
a little bit.
So it just, like I said, 10, 15 yards. And it's just standing there staring at me. And then I'm just thinking, like, this dog's about to come after me. So the other 2 people had basically made it down to the vehicles at that point. Like, got down to my Jeep. And I'm like, okay, I can't turn around, because if I turn around, I can't see it.
Right.
If I can't see it, it's probably going to get a better bite than I want to allow it to.
Yeah.
So I start backing up a little bit. Dog's just staring. Takes a couple steps closer, and then just turns, walks down to the road, walks out onto the road, and fog rolls down the road. The dog just takes off. I don't know if you can see this.
Goosebumps.
The dog takes off through the... And again, it's another time where every dog in that freaking valley goes nuts.
Yep.
The weirdest thing about the fog, though, it had a green electric hue to it.
That's bizarre.
I've seen that fog twice in my life in that area. One time was with this dog, and one time was where it just rolled through the valley at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Holy
But
crap.
it had a green, green, and it was almost like popping. Like, that's why I say electric. It was like popping. The dog goes out through that valley, and you hear those hounds, and you hear every dog. I mean, I would have swore you heard every dog from there to Tamaqua.
Yeah.
Just go nuts.
Huh. Jesus.
Now, it wasn't, like I said, it walked out of the woods. It was scary as shit. Not aggressive, not growling, not snarling. Just had this look on its face like, and I mean, it's dark.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I could see its face. And then it just walks down to the road. The fog just starts rolling across the road, and it's greenish, electric popping fog. And the thing just runs away. Every dog in that van.
That is bizarre. Well, I have a similar story too. Well, I didn't personally experience this one, but one of our listeners, who we are, friends with, and I know this guy has been back there a bazillion times because Halloween was always his favorite time of the year. But he was back there with a couple of friends, and they were parked across the street from Schombacher's grave. Right across the street is a little tiny Boy Scout meeting lodge building. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's something to do with the Boy Scouts. But it's an old stone building that looks very similar to the way the church looks. So right in front of it is a parking area. And usually when we would go out there, we would park in front of that Boy Scout building and then go up and walk around the cemetery and stuff, and then head back down there and go home. Well, he was down there sitting in his car with a bunch of his buddies. And they were just sitting there with the windows down and stuff, talking. And I guess they were getting ready to go up, or were just getting back from being up in the cemetery. But they said as they were sitting there, they heard like a noise, and they looked down to the road, and here down this road comes this black dog. And like Chad said, it was like black, no distinguishable features, almost like a black shadow, but it was clearly a dog. Goes running down the road in front of them. Trailed behind it was a fog, like Chad said. And then out of the fog, with no sound or anything, was this like ghastly stagecoach, like horse and buggy. This horse-drawn carriage goes barreling down the road behind this dog. Now they heard the dog. Mm-hmm. They could hear like a dog, like a dog running or whatever. But if I remember this correctly, they said that they heard the dog, and that's what caught their attention. They see this dog running. Then comes this fog, and followed behind it was this horse and buggy in the mist, and just went barreling past them. Mist trailed off. They got the hell out of there. But all the dogs went off as well after that.
Almost similar to the Dullahan of Irish folklore, the Headless Horseman.
Yes.
But a version of the Headless Horseman actually has it driving a carriage made of bone, carrying a spinal cord whip. Your life is going to find one. So yeah, that's I think I know who we're talking about in that.
Yeah.
So again, I have another creepy story from there.
Go for it.
Another night of, hey, we're bored. Let's go. We went to Constitution Drive.
Mhm.
Constitution Drive, creepy as hell that night.
Mhm.
So we left Constitution Drive, drove from Allentown, and then everybody's like, well, shit, we should go to Hawk Mountain. Let's go to Hawk Mountain. Every time we go there, it's weird.
Yeah.
And I'm like, of course, I'm the one driving all the time. And
You
of course,
always were the driver, yeah.
yeah. And of course, it's one of those nights where it's like, yeah, man, let's go up to Hawk Mountain. I'm driving. Is anybody putting gas in my truck? Like, of course, nobody ever had that much. Or they would do the, yeah, man, when we come back, I'll give you money. We get back, it'd be like 4 a.m. We'd go to the ham spam, and then everybody would disappear.
Yeah, they had money to eat, then they're gone.
Yeah. So we go up there, and we're driving around, and, of course, everybody after, and this is after we saw the dog by a few months. So everybody's like, oh, we got to go up to the top of the cemetery again and see if that dog comes out. And I'm thinking, yeah, great idea. You two actually went back to the truck. I was the one that was looking eye to eye with it. So they were like, yeah, man, we got to go back up there. We got to go back up there. So we walk up to the top of the cemetery. We get up to the top. We're up on that hill at the very top where the woods are.
Yes.
And there was a girl with us. And she goes, who's standing down at the church? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, there's somebody standing at the corner of the church looking up at us. And we're like, oh, great. This is probably, it's either another group of people like us, morons who have nothing better to do and are out ghost hunting at this hour of the evening. Security for the church, perhaps. Or just somebody who happened to be in the area, wandered in and saw us there and wanted to know what we were doing.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay. We turn around, we look, we don't see somebody. Then all of a sudden we see somebody come around the other side of the church. Can crystal clear make out a human figure standing there.
Yikes.
The only problem is, and the only way I've ever been able to describe this that it makes sense to anybody, if you remember Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe, the solid black had the shielded face mask.
Yeah.
All black uniform.
Yep.
No facial features. Black. And it would stand there, and no matter where we went in the cemetery, it would just randomly be looking at us.
Yeah.
Like it would turn itself that it could see us. So we're thinking, okay, this is security guard. We're thinking security guard. So we're like, okay. There's no signs that say no trespassing. There's no post-it, no don't be here after dark. Let's just walk back down to the vehicle. Well, we got to go past the church to get to the vehicle. So we're like, we'll say, hey, sorry, we didn't want to cause any problems. We're going to get going. So we can see the person. As we're walking, we still can't see facial features.
Right.
It's just this black person, black.
Yeah, shadow person.
Shadow person standing there.
Yeah.
So we're getting closer, and all of a sudden it disappears.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's at the corner of the building, so we're thinking, oh, it just stepped back. We can't see it where it's standing. And it pops out on the other side, but up a couple grades.
Yeah.
Now, you're neither the world's fastest person, and you just ran around the building and got up to this spot, or it leapt from one spot to another spot.
Right.
So now at this point,
which funny part though is one of the legends is if you drive the loop through the cemetery with your lights off, you're supposed to see spirits walking from tombstone to tombstone.
Well, we might have done that night.
Yeah. And so finish your story. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it is now up a few tombstones. So we were like, you know what? Screw this. We're walking towards it. If it's a person, two of us were pretty well trained martial artists. The third person was a girl who had just started training. So we were like, you know what? If it's a person, definitely think we could. If it tries to come after, if it's a crazy person, if it's a drunk, pretty sure we're going to win this one.
Well, I could tell you what, from being your personal beat up dummy or training dummy, I wouldn't have wanted to be that person if you would actually go to fight them. I can speak from personal experience.
But by the way, black market kimonos, if you're looking for a travel kimono, definitely one to buy.
There you go.
So start walking towards it. It's gone.
Mm.
We're all looking at it, and it's just gone.
Right.
We get my Jeep, start the Jeep up, start pulling out, and could see it standing at the church.
No.
Just stand like from years of doing security, it would remind me of somebody doing security. But like I said, it went from one corner of that building to way up on the hill by graves.
Yeah.
Seconds. There's no way somebody ran around that building, ran up the hill, and we didn't see them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
unless there was like a bunch of people out there messing with you that were all, you know what I mean, in on it. But that's very unlikely.
But the fact that when we started walking towards it, it was gone.
Right.
Pull out, and when the taillights, when I hit my brakes, it lit up the person standing there.
So the lights actually lit this shadow figure up.
Yeah, you couldn't see any. It still, again, just looked like Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe. Had no features in here at all. But when the taillights went on, you could see in my mirror, you could see somebody standing there in the red light.
That is creepy.
Yeah. And that was the same night in Constitutional Drive where something grabbed my leg.
I remember that. That's another story, though. We can make a full story or full show out of that. I have a story related to a shadow person there, too. But I totally forgot that back in the early days when Leslie and I were first dating, we actually went out there with our cameras and we wanted to do some long exposure photography. So I actually found a bunch of the files that we had. So I'm going to share some of those with everybody. And none of these were edited after the fact. This was all straight off the camera and stuff like that. So it actually gave a very creepy, ominous look to the images. That it was a mix between the fluorescent street lights and the sky, and it just created its own color cast. So this is a side of the church where the parking lot is going towards the cemetery. So the sky ended up looking purple, and the fluorescent street light created that green cast, and it just lit over top of the church like perfectly. But if you go around the front of the church, that's going up towards where Schombacher's grave is. And then this is the Boy Scout building that we were talking about. That's actually me in front of the door. I stood there, waited a little bit because it was like a 15-second exposure. So I stood there for a couple seconds and walked away to make it look like a ghost. Again, another one of the many ways people could easily fake pictures. But anyways, this is the Boy Scout building that we were talking about. And in front of it is the parking lot. Straight across the street is the little hill where Matthias Schombacher's grave is. Shadow person story. The same people that I was telling you about that had the experience with the dog and the ghost buggy. They were up in the field. They had a flashlight. Somebody said, hey, there's somebody standing down at the Boy Scout building, that second pole from the right. Somebody was leaning against that. They shined their flashlight down. The person was gone. They moved the flashlight. Still standing there, leaning against the pole. Shined the light back on him. He was gone. Took the light away. Still standing there. So very, very, very similar to your experience where the people were there and then would randomly disappear. Here's another shot of the front of the church, again with long exposure. That was me sitting on a bench. Then I got up and walked away, and it looks like a ghost. And then there's Leslie like praying in front of the church, and then she got up and moved away. So just fun stuff that I forgot that I had. So,
I
but it
remember
pertained to the topic.
Yeah, I remember you showing me those years ago.
Yeah. Oh God, those are, what is the date? 2009.
Yeah.
So
I-
long time ago.
I was going to count that out, 3 kids ago.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. Way before the first one even.
Yeah.
But Cindy, yes, what makes these stories great is we both have personal stories about the area. There are many, many more. Actually, one really quick, because I know we're like 15 minutes past our normal quitting time. One last story I will share is the area between Hawk Mountain and the church is Eckville. And people talk about the ghosts of Eck. And one of the stories in particular is the Angel of Eck. And the Angel of Eck is supposedly this ball of light as you're driving down the road going towards the church. A lot of people have reported seeing this ball of light that would be further on down the road, a single ball. And as you get closer, it gets larger and larger and larger to about 10 feet tall, right? Again, it kind of goes back to that Indian story, which I had never heard about before.
Mhm.
So this thing gets about 10 feet tall, and it starts to take shape of what looks like a man stepping out of this ball of light. A lot of people, some people say they saw wings on it, hence the Angel of Eck, as it's stepping out of this light. Other people didn't report wings. So I guess each person, depending on the type of person they are you good? Are you bad? I don't know. Maybe you get a different thing or being coming out of this light. I don't know. But that was one of the lure, is this light. So me, along with probably a half dozen or more friends, drove up to Hawk Mountain in the middle of the night. Again, it was a full moon night. We all go up to the East Lookout, which is the first lookout that you would come to as you're going up the trail to hike the mountain. Half the party was intoxicated, the other half wasn't, right? I was one of them that wasn't. So we're all walking up, and I'm always the cautious one. I'm always the parent of the group, I guess you could say, or the big brother of the group. We're walking up. I'm trying to make sure nobody's getting hurt. I'm kind of irritated, because I'm going up there with a purpose. I'm taking these people up because we want to go see ghosts. I told them the stories and the experiences, and we were going up there with intention. And other people, they drink and they, I guess, can't just enjoy something for what it is. They have to go over the edge, whatever, it is what it is. So I'm trying to babysit these people as we're walking up there, and we get up to the East Lookout, and we're all hanging out, and it's a all glacier deposit stone on the top of this mountain. So you go to the edge of the East Lookout, you're falling probably 50, maybe 100 feet down into nothing but just solid glacier stone, like granite stone. So I'm trying to make sure these idiots aren't going to fall, because it is literally, you take one step, you're off, you're dead. So I'm hanging out there where, everybody's, just looking at the lookout. Oh, ghost, blah, 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 all making fun of things and whatnot, and I'm, again, trying to make sure nobody's getting hurt. Then all of a sudden, out in the distance, we see this unique ball of light. Wasn't your typical airplane with like a solid white light and a red and green blinker or something like that. It was just this big orange ball of light. And it was starting to go parallel to us. And then all of a sudden, it started coming straight at us. Well, at first, we're like, oh, everybody's like, it's a ghost, oh, blah, 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 blah. And they're all making fun and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is a little weird. So, I'm not saying it, but in my mind, I'm like, this is bizarre. This is a little bit out of the ordinary from what we're used to up here. So it starts getting closer and closer and closer, bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, holy crap. This is it. This is the Angel of Eck. We're seeing the Angel of Eck. Not on the road, but in the area. And we're like, holy crap. I'm just like high on this event. You know what I mean? I'm like, because this is what I live for. I wanted to see this ghost. I wanted this to happen. Then people start freaking out. Some of the girls that were with us, I don't like this. I don't like this. I want to go. I want to go. And they're pulling. I'm like, no. And some of the people started freaking out. Some of the drunk people started freaking out. Like, oh, let's get the fuck out of here. Blah, blah, blah. So I stop everybody from running. And at the time and was quite a bit larger than everybody else. So I grabbed a hold of him. I said, no. I said, half you guys are drunk. Half you guys are scared. It's dark. It's hard to see. There's rocks all over the place. I said, we're going to stick it out. We're going to see what this is. This is what we came here for.
Mm-hmm.
I said, if it gets too weird, we're going to link arms and we're going to walk out of here together. Nobody's going to get hurt. Nobody's going to get left behind. All right, all right. So we all link arms together. I guess it kind of put people in a little bit more of a safe zone, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we're watching everybody. It's getting closer. Dude, this thing was massive right on top of us. And again, Hawk Mountain, you're up there pretty high in elevation, right? It gets probably 20 yards away from us. The light goes out. Red light blinks. Green light blinks. It was a plane. I couldn't believe it. And at that point, everybody's like, oh, God, you were so scared. You know, everybody's busting on each other. But part of me felt a little bit of relief, but at the same time, because everybody's like, what if it's aliens? I'm like, well, maybe we'll be taken somewhere better. You know what I mean? Like, screw it. Let's go. I'm on that ship if they offer, you know. But part of me was relieved, but part of me was kind of like, damn, I was really hoping it would have been something otherworldly or paranormal, but that was the story. So that being said, thanks for the show tonight.
Yeah, no problem. Just to anybody who's in the area who has never been there or gets to the area and has never been there, well worth checking out.
Absolutely.
What is it? The River of Rock?
Yes. Yes.
That's
the River
awesome
of Rock
site.
is you hike up the trail and then there's an offshoot trail, and that's an all-day hike too. So if you plan on going to that, don't go later in the evening. Make sure you have all day and bring water because it takes a while, but it's really cool. This long glacier deposit stone. So it's literally looks like a river of boulders just kind of weaving its way through the forest. It's really cool.
And if I can find it, I will post the family photo from when I was a kid.
Oh, I want to see that. That.
It was my grandmother had cancer, so my mom and her sister and brother decide, we're going to do a big family portrait at Hawk Mountain with all of us. And it's like 1989, 90-ish, so
tube socks all the way up to the kneecaps.
Oh, jeans and a white, like a fluffy white sweater. I think it has like a brown stripe across it. And I swear to God, my stepdad is wearing the same shirt. And I think we're all dressed identical.
I have to see that.
I have to find it. It's somewhere. But
classic.
If I can find it, I will actually post it. Or if I can find it already posted on Facebook, I will post it on our page.
That would be great. You know what we should do? We should reach out to the Hawk Mountain Sanctuary and see if we could do an investigation in the tavern.
That'd be pretty cool.
I think we make that one of our goals, to do a show or at least an investigation. Mm-hmm. And maybe we could add that to our plan for the future of the show, which we will announce. We will announce the future plans in a later episode. I don't want to spill the beans yet, but yeah, I say we reach out and then we share it with our audience. Yeah, so on that note, it is almost a half hour past our end time. So Chad, good job putting the show together tonight, man. I greatly appreciate it. And to everybody out there listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. Total last minute. We didn't get to prep much for this, but we got it together. I didn't have much time. Chad had everything together, but it was kind of last minute. We were talking to each other a few hours ago. And we're like, are we going to do it? Are we not? And we're like, we're going to do it. It's time. So thank you, everybody. And we'll be back again in 2 weeks. I don't know what the topic is going to be for that show. We're trying to get somebody who I know that actually lives in the Bridgewater Triangle, lives in a very historic area that is completely related to one of the main stories we had of the Bridgewater Triangle. So I would like to get this gentleman on the show. Hopefully the next one, I don't know if it's going to be the next show or not, but we're going to work on getting him and he could tell his stories. So we'll keep everybody abreast of the topic as soon as we find out, but it will be in 2 weeks. And then after that will be our annual, I guess, if you want to call it that, because I think the last one was 6 years ago.
I was going to say, we've been doing this show for 10 years. We're 60 episodes into it. I don't.
Yeah. Our Halloween special will be on the 31st. So that said, thank you again, everybody. Chad, thank you. It was a pleasure, brother.
Yep. Thank you, man. It was a good evening. Thank you, everybody. And it was fun talking and sharing these stories. So,
Until next time.
you guys all have a great week. See you next episode.
Yes, sir. All right, buddy. Have a good night.
Night.
There we go.